What's up, Renegades? Welcome back to the Just Winging It podcast. I'm Tattoo Tom. We're very excited to bring you this week's episode. Got a very special guest. It's our first guest here on the podcast. Stillbrave's very own Director of Mentorship Services, Loren Jewell. But before we get to that, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some friends that I mentioned to you last week. You see, when I started this podcast, when we first got the idea for this podcast, sort of the punk rock teenager in me really struggled with the selling out mentality versus the grown-ass businessman in me that realized I was going to have to seek outside backing if I wanted to be relevant and competitive and successful. So how just exactly was I going to reconcile all those voices inside my head? Well, interestingly enough, in walks Lucia and Suhail Alami, friends of mine. They've been friends of mine for many, many years and huge supporters of Stillbrave. And late last year, they became my mortgage lender and realtor, respectively. There's a gazillion realtors in Loudoun County and in the DMV area. And, I didn't even think I would be able to qualify for a loan, quite frankly. But Lucia, who again, she's my friend. I call her my soul sister. I don't know exactly where we're from, but I know we're from the same place. And when this life is over, we're probably going to be going back to that same place. So I trust her, and I always have. And, she told me to take a chance, man, apply for this loan. Let's see what happens. Well, lo and behold, I qualified for, a humble loan, and she was able to secure it for me for, a historically low interest rate. I never imagined in a million, I think any of us have, that interest rates would go so low. And then all of a sudden, Sue became my realtor. And I didn't have enough of a loan to really look for anything inside the Beltway, real close to DC. So I had to come outside, which was fine for me because I sort of wanted to go into the mountains and look at some of the less populated city areas. But that meant that Sue was going to have to drive out to all these remote places whenever I wanted to look at a property. And the best part about that story is that, Sue never made me feel like I was inconveniencing him, and I even would say to him, I'm sorry to take you all the way out here. I don't know if I'm going to dig this place or whatever. But he just came, man. And she would always be available to to answer any questions I had about, what it was going to cost me per month, because I'm on a budget, man. I got 5 kids, and so do they, interestingly enough. So they were super sympathetic to my concerns about my budget, how much I could afford and how much I couldn't afford. So they got me into a dream house, and they got me in at a very competitive rate, especially now in this cutthroat market, where it's a seller's market. And I surely would have gotten lost in the flotsam and jetsam of that if it weren't for them helping me to navigate my way through. So, if you're looking to buy or sell a home, in the Loudoun County area or outside of the DMV, really don't look any further than Lou and Sue Alami, because there really is a difference. You can follow the link in the comment section to find out more information about them. And we're going to be working on some cool projects with them and some initiatives with them in the future. So without further ado, this is the Just Winging It podcast with Tattoo Tom in association with Lou and Sue. So before we turn things over to Loren for some little bit of fodder, let me take a couple of minutes and talk to you about some initiatives that Stillbrave has going on that I think is going to be really exciting moving forward. One of the things that we have is this tattoo auction / lottery. If you're interested in tattoos like I am, you'd probably be very interested in tax-deductible tattoos. So how is that even possible? How is that even a thing? Well, that's a thing because Stillbrave, we're renegades, and we think outside of the box. So we've got 2 tattoo initiatives going on. One of them is an auction, and you can go online. You'll find the links in the comment section. You can go online and you can bid on this auction. I've done this in the past to the highest bidder, and the highest bidder will win a matching tattoo with me. And what we're going to do is, I'm writing a book, and I'm making each one of the chapters about a different tattoo that I have. It's called Inside Out, If These Tattoos Could Talk. That's beside the point. The point is, I want to talk about the Two Feathers Society in that book, but I don't have a Two Feathers Society tattoo. So the winner of that auction will get a matching tattoo with me of the Two Feathers logo, and you'll also be featured in that chapter in my book called The Two Feathers Society. If you'd like more information about how super rad the Two Feathers Society is, what we do and what we're about, follow the link in the comments. Now, the second part of that initiative is the lottery. because not everybody's going to be able to be competitive and bid on this auction. And we know that. In the past, when I've auctioned off parts of my body, they've gone for $4,000, $5,000. So we don't want anybody to feel left out. So we're having a second initiative, and that's going to be a tattoo lottery. And the exciting part of that is if you win, if we pull your name and your lottery ticket out of the hat, you're going to get a tattoo with me, but you don't have to get, you're not held to the constraints of a logo or anything. You get to come up with the idea of what kind of tattoo you're going to make me get with you. Now, nothing inappropriate, please, but hey, let's have, I work with kids, right? But let's have fun. And let's be creative about this. The first time I let somebody choose a tattoo for me, it was Princess Tara, a little 12-year-old girl at the time with brain cancer. And she made me get a kitty cat, butterfly, unicorn, standing on a softball, farting rainbow gas. I have that tattoo on the back of my leg. So I'm open to anything, man. Let's have fun with it. Let's be about it. And the best part is, yes, they are tax-deductible tattoos, but the money that we raise through these initiatives will help children with cancer and their families, and many services and programs that Stillbrave offers. Now, something else I want to mention, you're probably seeing that I'm rocking this Savage Kindness t-shirt. Stillbrave has launched a new line of fashion swag yesterday. We've got t-shirts, we've got hoodies, we've even got leggings. We've got several different styles, we've got 7 different designs, and you can go to our online store and purchase one of these things. The leggings are high quality leggings. They got their super rad Savage Kindness logo on it. And remember, kindness is kindness, right? But savage kindness is really savage. So anyways, we want to talk to you about those couple of things and take a look in the comment section to find links. So I'll tell you a little bit about Loren before we start. So Loren came to work to Stillbrave a few years ago, but the thing about Loren that I find so fascinating and interesting, she's the director of Mentorship services, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as we get into our podcast. But Loren was diagnosed at about 14 years old with a very aggressive type of bone cancer called Ewing sarcoma, and the doctors were really frank with her parents about it. They said, "Listen, we're not entirely sure that your daughter's going to make it. And in the event that she does live, there's a very good chance she's not going to be able to walk. And if she is lucky enough to walk, she's going to be disabled. She's not really going to ever be able to work. She's not going to have a real job. Because of all the chemo and radiation, it's very unlikely that she'd ever be able to have children. And they said a bunch of stuff to her parents that I guess scared them, would scare any parent, certainly would have scared me. But the funny part is nobody bothered to tell Loren those things. So not only did Loren not die, she's sitting right next to me. I'm going to show you her in a second. But she walks and she runs. She runs ultramarathons with me. Last 2 years ago, we tried to run the Bigfoot 200 together up Mount St. Helens volcano. And she's a firefighter for the Fairfax County Fire Department. She literally runs into burning buildings, throws people over her shoulder, and drags them out and saves their lives. And one of my most favorite people, kids, whatever, in the entire world is her daughter, Skylar. Another thing that Loren does is she dresses up as Supergirl, and she propels down the side of hospitals so that the kids with cancer on the oncology floors can see a superhero outside her window. So just to recap, Loren is a firefighter. Loren is an ultramarathoner. Loren is a mom. Loren is a superhero. Loren is my soul sister. And she's also a childhood cancer survivor who they said might not even make it. So anyways, without further ado, let me turn things over. I'm not going to turn them over to you. I'm going to stay in the mix. But let me introduce you to my soul sister, Loren Jewell. Hello, Loren. Thanks for joining us today on Just Winging It podcast.
Hey, Tom. Wow, what an introduction. Jeez. I don't even know what to say after that.
Well, it's been a long day. We've been trying to work out some bugs on the podcast. So Loren and I, she's a real trooper. She's hung up with us, and we've got through all of this together. And that's what I love about Loren. She's one of these people that I can rely on, that I can count on. I can trust her. I can confide in her. I can counsel with her. And she's one of the only people, if not the only person, that I trust to go into the hospitals, the confines of the hospital room, the chemotherapy clinics, and really interact with our children. And like I said, she's the director of Mentorship services. So her job, and I'll let her talk about that in just a second, her job is to help mentor mostly girls because she relates better to them, but also some young men as they transition into post-active recovery from their treatments, as they get back into the real world, back into the swing of things. And she also helps them navigate through those treatments. And unfortunately, when the prognosis and the outcomes aren't what we hope for, Loren's there and Loren's bedside, and she holds their hands, much the same way I do when these kids are when they're dying. So, Loren, I want you to just, if you would be so kind, to introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners, and let them know, number one, why you chose, out of all the different foundations that you could have gone to work for, why you chose to come to work for Stillbrave, and then talk a little bit about what you do, if you'd be cool.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
So first of all, I want to say thank you for having me. Super excited and honored, especially to be the first guest on this podcast. When you had the idea for the podcast, I knew it was a great idea from the start and totally believed in it. So it's pretty exciting for me to be here today. So one of the things that you talked about in your introduction today about kind of the out of the box, that's what Stillbrave does. That's one of the main reasons I was drawn to Stillbrave. I saw a lot of your stuff, your TED Talks, a lot of your things that have been on YouTube, Facebook, things like that, before I even really got the gist of what Stillbrave does. One of the things that struck me first was you told the truth. A lot of these other organizations, they do a lot of things, don't get me wrong. They do a lot of great things for kids and their families. But I felt like you told the truth. And there's a lot of truth out there that people really don't know. And they really don't understand what these kids and their families go through. And you told the hard, cold truth, the ugly things, the scary things, the gross things, all of it. And I could really, really relate to that because I had actually been through it myself. And then once I learned a little bit more about what you did, what Stillbrave did, I just grew to really become drawn to how you guys kind of represent yourselves. And I feel like we're kind of the organization or family or people that people come to when other people tell them no. So, if somebody comes to us, we don't tell them no, even if it's a crazy idea or we have to figure out some crazy way to make it happen. We figure it out, and I feel like we're kind of also, people that they get told no or they don't feel comfortable going to other people because maybe they don't see the cancer world or things, the way that the media portrays it, or, we're easy to relate to and we don't turn people away. We always try to figure it out. So that was definitely the first thing that kind of drew me to you and to Stillbrave. And I always tell you, and I always tell everybody, I wish there was a Tattoo Tom when I was sick, because I felt incredibly alone and I didn't feel like anybody really understood what I was going through. In fact, when I was diagnosed, a lot of my friends kind of drifted away and they kind of left me, they didn't really know how to relate or what to do. So it would have been nice to have Stillbrave or a Tattoo Tom there to kind of navigate me through what I was going through.
Okay, well, I'm very lucky that I get to spend time with you now. You got a Tattoo Tom in your life now.
Yeah, now I have one.
Yeah, that's not a threat. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
But yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because that's one of the things that we do pride ourselves on here at Stillbrave, and I've always been very animate about that. And the social workers that we work closely with know that when all the other foundations say no for whatever reason, they can call Stillbrave because we won't say no. I can't honestly think of one time that we haven't honored a request or been able to offer some assistance. And we don't have any applications to fill out. There's no promises to make to anybody. We don't make you sign anything. We don't care who you voted for, your parents voted for. We don't do any of that stuff. We don't check your status as a resident in the United States. We don't do any of that stuff. We help people, and we do cool stuff. And that's I'm glad that you mentioned that, because we really are I like to pride, and several of the social workers will say that, we're the foundation that you're the foundation, Tom, that we call when we don't know who else to call. And that excites me. And I'm always like, well, you put it to me like that, we're going to make it happen.
And when it really clicked for me, you invited me to meet one of the kids that was sick, and he was in the hospital. And I don't want to name drop because I'm not, I want to respect their privacy. But basically, he had just had a really hard surgery that caused his face to look different, and he appeared to be not disfigured, but just, he had a different look to him, and he was super embarrassed and shy, and he was very uncomfortable. And I just remember, we went out and got a bunch of his favorite things, and, you told me all these things you were going to do, and we were going to brighten his day. And I was kind of like, okay, like, I kind of went with it, and I was like, all right, we'll see what happens. And, we went and got a bunch of his favorite things. We got a bunch of balloons, and when we walked into the room, we walked into this room with this kid and his mom, and he was hiding behind a book or something, and he wasn't really looking at us too much, and mom was pretty sad, and you could tell there was just a lot of sadness in the room. um, but when we left that room, Tom, it was incredible. I've never seen anything like it. I got goosebumps talking about it right now. I've never felt anything like that. I mean, you turned this kid's day, his life, I think, completely around. I mean, we were fist bumping, he was smiling, you were smiling, mom was smiling. I mean, we turned it around. You turned it around for him. And it was just incredible to see that and to be there and witness that. And that's when it 110% stuck for me. I want to be a part of this.
Right. Well, I appreciate you saying that. It's funny, growing up, if you had asked me what I was going to do for a living or what kind of job I would, and you told me this would be what, and that I'd be any good at, or I'd have told you were shit stinking crazy. Like I wouldn't have believed any of it, So I appreciate your kind words, and I appreciate what you're saying. Nobody's more surprised than me about that fact, but I just go in there into the rooms, and now you do it too. And that's what I love is, you go in there and you do that same thing. When children are, inconsolable, when they've had a tough time, when they've just been through a surgery. I mean, I know a couple of children that you went and that you mentor who, through amputations, through relapse, through all kinds of stuff. You go in there and I see the pictures that you send me. And I see the smiles on their faces, and and I get the emails from their parents, and people are always messaging me about, man, you got to send Loren. Funny story. We were talking about this little girl today. I had a woman reach out to me about somebody, and I said, don't worry, I got everything under control. I'm sending the Loren. And this lady goes, you're sending the Loren? I was like, yeah, I'm sending the Loren.
The Loren.
The Loren, right? So she was very, because she knows you had come and spoke. I remember we went to that gala in Winchester and spoke.
Yeah.
With people at Celebration of Hope. I told her I was sending the Loren to take care of this girl and to mentor this girl. And that was it. She's like, you should have told me that. I'll talk to you later. So it was really cool.
I don't have people address me that way now. The
Loren?
Yeah, I like that. That's nice.
That's what I'm going to call you from now on for sure.
The Loren.
But that's the thing. And that's what, and that's what Stillbrave does. And that's, I think, the reason that we call ourselves Renegade, there's a song, that Rage Against the Machine's band covered. And one of the lines in the song is, renegades are the people with their own philosophies. They change the course of history. Everyday people like you and me. We're the renegades. We're the ones that change history. And it's not like we possess any extra DNA or we have some secret formula where we're born with something that makes us capable, but we just do it. We just show up and we wing it, right? Because I know that boy that you were talking about, I was talking, big shit before we walked in there because you were with me. But quite frankly, I had no idea what I was going to say when I went in there. I had no idea what I was going to do. When I went there, I had no idea what he was going to look like, and it is shocking sometimes to see what these kids go through and what they experience, is particularly after a major surgery like that. It's sometimes it's hard to look at because it's shocking, but that's a reality, and you touched on it, the media, and I'm not going to bash anybody in particular. I'm trying to refrain from doing that, but certain other organizations, they present a really pretty picture of smiling, bald-headed children who go to Disney World, and then everybody gets better. There's a cure. And everybody lives happily ever after. But we both know that's, that
it's just not the truth.
Nothing could be further from the truth, And we've got a lot of stuff going on in future episodes that will talk a lot more about that. So again, let me just ask a little bit more about what you do, what your role is as the director of mentorship services. Tell me some of the things that you do. So obviously a social worker will call me and they'll say, hey, Tom, I need you to send the Loren. We got a kid that's struggling. So tell me how that is. What do you do when you first meet a kid? What are you doing with them? How are you engaging with them? What exactly is your job?
Okay, so I think too, the age range between, 11, 12 or so and to 17 or 18, I mean, that's a huge transitional period in your life anyway. I mean, the difference between a 12-year-old and even a 16-year-old is a huge difference. So when you're talking about, oh, you're a teenager, and oh, by the way, you have cancer too, it just adds a whole different dynamic. You're trying to figure out who you are. You're trying to figure out hormones, puberty. You're trying to figure out, why am I here? What am I doing? All these things, and then add in cancer. And so, one of the reasons, I'll give you a little bit of background before I tell you exactly what I do, just maybe to give the audience more of an understanding of the need for it. When you're a teenager and you're experiencing all these different things, it's really hard to connect with people anyway. And then you go in and you get this diagnosis. And honestly, at least for myself, and I found this with a lot of teenagers, you don't really understand what a cancer diagnosis is. You're not really thinking it in terms of, oh, I could die. You're thinking, oh, I can't go to school. Oh, I can't go and play my favorite sport. Oh, I'm going to miss the party next week. I'm not going to be able to go to this Halloween party, or I'm going to lose my hair. That was huge for me. Actually, when my parents told me that I was sick, the only time I cried was when my mom told me that I was going to lose my hair. That was detrimental to me. And I've seen even young boys, they go through the same thing. Your hair is part of your identity.
Right.
And
not mine.
well, maybe this part. It's a huge part of your identity, and I that crushed me. I remember when it fell out. I remember what it felt like. I remember when my mom had a barber come to the house to shave my head. I remember all of those things, and I think even people that try to relate, and people will go out and shave their heads, and I think that's a great cause to raise money. However, there's a difference when you have the option to shave your head and you don't. I mean, it's so powerless.
Yeah, I remember my daughter Shayla was 16 when she started chemotherapy, and just like you're saying, like the all the things that a 16-year-old girl worries about, she still worries about even with that cancer diagnosis, and they're already sometimes insecure about their bodies. Their bodies are changing. They're going through all these things, and then for their hair to fall out, I mean, it's traumatic for them. I get that.
It really
I can
is.
relate to that firsthand. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No. I mean, it's true though, and I'm sure as a father that was incredibly hard to watch and to endure with her, because you can't control it either.
Right.
And and then part of that, a lot of times, especially with bone cancer, you have to have radical surgeries, sometimes amputations. I was lucky enough I didn't have to get my leg amputated, but I did have part of my hip bone removed. And, like you said, they told me I probably wouldn't be able to walk again. But also, I mean, I wasn't really thinking about that when I was 14. I was thinking, I'm going to look different. I'm going to have this huge scar and I'm going to look different, and people aren't going to accept me. I'm not going to be normal. And talking to other teens too, we don't know what normal is, but we want to do everything to be normal. Even if you didn't feel like that way before, once you get this diagnosis and all these things change and you become different, so different than everybody else, that's all you want.
There was a kid. His name is Gavin. He passed away many years ago. But one of his, we got a tattoo for his dad of one of Gavin's quotes. And before Gavin passed away, he said that exact same thing. He goes, when I was growing up, I used to think that normal was boring. And he goes, man, I'd do anything for some normal right now.
And it's so true. And so anyway, just give you a little background. There's just so many pieces and so many things that I think teenagers go through and face and have to endure alongside a cancer treatment or cancer diagnosis. And I think in every age group, even adults, I mean, there's different things that you face and different things you endure. But that those teenage years, there's just so much going on already, And so I knew that after I had gone through all of that, I wanted to do something. I didn't really know what. I just knew I wanted to do something to help relate or help out teens that were going through this, because even just talking to somebody that's been through it, it's so helpful and it just makes you feel like you're not alone. So I really wanted to do that. And I wanted to show other teenagers, look, you might get this horrible prognosis, diagnosis, and they're going to tell you all these horrible things. They have to. It's their job to do that. But you can get through it. And it may not be exactly what you think, or it may not be exactly how you want to get through it, but you can get through it, and you can accept that challenge. And it may not, the ending may not be how you want it, but you can accept the challenge and work through it.
What's really exciting for me, particularly when we were sort of, I knew almost immediately that I wanted you to work for Stillbrave and to work for me some kind of way, because we were sort of trying to figure out what your role was going to be. And you said some things to that effect to me, it's like you're saying right now. And I can remember, my daughter always making similar comments about how alone she felt, because what a lot of people don't realize is the teen years and the young adult years are what I consider and what I often call the sort of the lost demographic in the childhood cancer community, right? In the childhood cancer world, because when you're a small kid, and you're cute and people love you and you're smiling and and everything, and then the magicians come by the hospital and the princesses come by and the Build-A-Bear workshops come by. Well, when you're 16-year-old,
I don't want that shit.
I remember my daughter Shayla was like, I gotta build one more damn bear. Like she was mad.
If they bring sand art in one more time.
Exactly. So it's legitimately like the lost demographic. And every parent that I know whose kid was in a teen or a young adult, I mean, they felt even more lost and more like just sort of discounted and an afterthought. And
well, when I was in the hospital, we didn't have Wi-Fi. We didn't have movie. I must have watched the same damn movie over and over again. Like, we didn't have iPhones and FaceTime and all these other things. We were even more isolated.
And then, well, that's what you do, though. That's what Loren does for Stillbrave and for the children and the families whom we serve, is she fills that void. She fills that much needed thing. So these kids don't feel lost and alone anymore. I can't tell you how many, and I've already intimated it, I can't tell you how many kids, have said to me how much it means to them that you just show an interest in their lives, that you show up for them, and that you take them out to dinner, you hang out,
I basically see myself kind of like as a big sister. So when I meet usually girls, it is usually girls, I'll meet them, and usually before COVID
If it was teenage boys, they'd be so flustered with how cute you are. No, I'm kidding.
Wow, 2 compliments.
That's all you're getting. That's all
I
you're
know.
getting.
Like, I'm not gonna know how to act. But yeah, typically it's teenage girls, and pre-COVID times, I would take them out to dinner or meet them in the hospital. It's a little bit different now. We have to kind of meet virtually. But basically, we would meet up and have dinner or coffee or smoothies or something like that, and kind of get to know each other. And it's always so funny to me because, and with my job, I meet strangers all the time. And so I know how to talk to strangers. I know how to come up with conversation. That's not a problem for me anyway. But we immediately vibe. Like, I've never encountered a teenage girl or boy that has cancer and we hadn't vibed. Like, I don't know. There's just some kind of connection there where we instantly vibe together and we have this bond. And, kind of like you were saying, you never thought you'd see yourself where you are today doing what you do. I mean, I never saw myself doing this either, but I do have that connection with those teens. And so they will text me, call me, I give them my phone number, and they can text me, call me in the middle of the night if they're having anxiety or they have a question. A lot of times it starts out, especially the newer diagnosed kids, they just ask me questions. What does this mean? What does that mean? Because a lot of times the doctors and the parents, they're having all these conversations and they're not meaning to, but they're leaving them out, and they don't want to tell them the scary stuff. And teens want to know that. And even though, as a parent, you're trying to protect your kid, and I totally understand that. I'm a mom. I would do the same thing probably. There needs to be someone that can talk to them about the scary stuff and can be straight with them. And so I tell them, I'm wide open. I'm an open book. You can ask me anything you want. I'm going to tell you the truth.
And that's what I appreciate about you, because that's what I do. I said, and I say it all the time, and I make no apologies for saying it. And I think we're not Willy Wonka. We're not candy coating shit. We're not, because the kids can smell that. They can see right through that. If you're bullshitting them or you're not being completely honest with them, they sense that. They know they're not stupid. The doctors come in and they say certain things, and kids can see right through that. And I think that may be part of the reason that the kids do sort of warm up to you and I, because kids and dogs are a real good sense of, telling, if people are genuine and people are authentic, and you are that. And I think that really, you shine in those confines and in those moments when the kids need somebody that they can trust, somebody that isn't going to blow sunshine up their ass. They need somebody that they can trust and give it to them straight. And that's what you do. And that's why I value you so much. I mean, I could spend the rest of the episode just talking about how much I enjoy having you, on my team, because you're not just on my team.
That was another compliment, by the way.
Nah, that was a sideways. That wasn't a comment. All right, listen.
I'm remembering these.
we want to talk some more about all that stuff, but and I want to find out a little bit more about what it's like to be a firefighter and some of the other things that you do. Well, let me ask you a question, because it's no big secret to those who know me that I love quotes. And I love, collecting quotes. My favorite quote is a quote about quotes, interestingly enough. So my favorite quote is, most people who collect things, they collect tangible things, right? But a quotations collector, we collect things like wisdom. We collect life. We collect invisible beauty. We collect souls captured in ink. And so I have to ask you, just to kind of lighten the mood for just a second, what is your favorite quote and why?
All right. So I'll go with the one that's actually tattooed on me. My favorite quote is, "I am not what has happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And I think that's incredibly powerful, because I think it can relate to all kinds of things in life, not just cancer. But, what if you have a poor upbringing, or you have some kind of tragedy as a child, or, you don't have to become what has happened to you. At any second, you can make a choice, and you can have a different life, or you can have what you want.
Well, that's one of the things that is fascinating to me about you too. While you are a childhood cancer survivor, and you do try to give back, and you do try, to use that as a way to help other people, you don't necessarily let that identify you. You're a million other things too. Like, you're a firefighter and a mom and an ultramarathon runner, and you're all these other things. And so, it's fascinating to me how you haven't allowed yourself to be boxed in. Sometimes people can easily get stuck in an identity. It can even be a not such a good thing, if you get too wrapped up in being a childhood cancer survivor, and let that be an excuse that you make for things, and let that sometimes be a way of not living your life,
Absolutely,
to the fullest. And I think that's a good quote for you, for sure. So, okay, cool. Well, I was interested. I was interested.
What do you think it was? Do you think it was going to be ridiculous?
I was a little nervous when I asked you, because I was like, I just don't. We never really talked about it before. And there's a bazillion quotes out there, but I like that. That one's good. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the race, because you and I are about to compete in a 240-mile ultramarathon.
Only 240.
Only 240
it's
miles.
Not really.
Yeah. And it's not only is it 240 miles, because anybody can do that. It's 240 miles through the Moab freaking desert in Utah, where it'll be hot during the day,
a little sweaty,
and then it'll be well below freezing at night. So let me just give the people that are listening a little bit more information about what this race is. Those of you who've been following me for a while, you know that I run these ultramarathons year after year after year to raise money for children with cancer and their families, and the many programs and services that we offer. So basically what it boils down to is, Loren and I are going to run 240 miles. And this isn't something where we run 5 miles and we step away and take a nap for 8 hours and then we start running again. We're literally going to run 240 miles nonstop, because Loren's she only got half a damn hip to begin with. So we're not running anything. We're not winning this race. It's going to take everything we have just to finish this race. So we're going to be sleeping. I think they give us like 100 and some hours to complete the race. We'll probably sleep 5 or 6 hours total, and it'll be 45 minutes here, an hour here, because there's real strict time cutoffs that we have to meet in order to continue on in the race. If we don't get out of an aid station by a certain time cutoff, we're automatically disqualified. And we both have experience with that, but that's what's interesting too. And I'm going to talk about that in a second, because that's part of the compelling reason why we do this, and the provocative nature of these races. But anyway, it's 240 miles through the Moab Desert. And we're going to dedicate each of those 240 miles to a different child who's either fighting cancer, is in remission from cancer, or sadly who has lost their battle to cancer. My daughter Shayla is going to be mile 240. She'll be the last mile. She's going to try to hopefully keep me going so I don't give up and I don't just get disqualified. I don't DNF, things like that. If you go to the link section, if you go to the comment section, you'll find a link to the Moab 240 on our website. And what you can do there is you can see pictures, because Loren and I are literally going to carry pictures of 240 kids. And we're going to acknowledge each one of those children at every mile. Because I think I speak for a lot of parents, particularly parents who have lost children to cancer. One of our biggest fears is that our children are going to be forgotten. It's almost like sometimes people are afraid to say my daughter's name because they're going to be like, they'll be like, oh, Shayla this. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say it. I'm like, what do you think? I forgot that my daughter died just because you said it. And all of a sudden I remember because you said her name. No, I'm well aware that my daughter died. But what I don't want to have happen is I don't want you to stop talking about her. And I don't want you to forget about her. And I don't want the world to forget about her. And I want her life to have meaning. And even though it was short, there's a friend of mine once told me, they said, a long life doesn't necessarily make for a good life. And that really hit home with me, because while my daughter's life was short, it was powerful and it was profound. And it certainly set the course of how I was going to live the rest of my life. And I wouldn't be touching the lives and helping the families that I do on a daily basis had it not been for my daughter's life. And interestingly enough, for my daughter's death. While it was the worst thing that's ever happened to me, there's a part of me that thinks maybe it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I miss her a great deal. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But anyways, so it's 240 miles through the Moab Desert. And what we're going to do is we're asking for sponsors for those miles. So if you have a team, if you have a business, if you have a sewing group, if you have a bridge club, they still play bridge. Do you even know what bridge is? How old are you? You don't even know what bridge is. All right.
Is that a card game?
Yeah, it's a card game. So if you have a bridge club or something and you want to sponsor a mile, we're asking you to step up and read through these kids' stories and sponsor a mile. We're asking for $1,000 sponsorship over the next 6 or 7 months until the race. There's a variety of ways that you can raise it. You can have bake sales. You can, have GoFundMe accounts. You can sell t-shirts. You can do anything you want, wash cars. There's lots of cool ways to do it. If you're a business and you raise that $1,000, that's all tax deductible money. You can write that off, But also, if you don't have money and you can't sponsor an entire mile, just go through and read the stories, and maybe you could donate $1 to one or more kids of those 240 children. And if you can't even donate $1, because I know times are tough right now, if you can't donate any money, then just please just go and read their stories and say their names and share those stories and share those pictures, because I don't want my daughter to be forgotten. And I don't want any one of those children on that website and those 240 children to be forgotten. Because what's really exciting is when you do sort of, start a team that helps to sponsor this kid's mile, it gives new, I don't know if it's the right way to say this, but it gives new life to that kid, to that community that really rallied behind that kid, back in the day when they were going through treatment. And then also it's a great way to celebrate the kids, who are in remission, who are doing great, and what a great way to encourage and support children who are currently in treatment when they see people raising money for them,
oh yeah,
and trying to sponsor their mile. And it's an amazing thing. We have a friendly little competition, to see who can raise the most money. We have a separate competition for businesses because we know that they're going to raise more money than the Bridge Club will raise. So we have two separate competitions, one for corporate businesses and one for just, the Bridge Club, the church group, whatever. And again, I could talk on and on about this, but please use the link in the comment section. And you can do nothing else. Just please read the stories. And please say their names. And please, if you can think about it and you can afford it, make a donation. We'll have a lot more information about that. I think Chris said we were probably going to do, an episode or at least a partial video that really talks in great detail about that. But follow the link in the comment section and you can find out more information about that. So with that being said, let's talk about how we don't finish them too sometimes. So,
while you're talking about it, my legs hurt because they're sore from training.
So some of you know who have followed me that it's because of COVID, we skipped a year, but I tried to run the Bigfoot 200, arguably the most difficult ultramarathon in North America. I tried 4 times to complete this race. And you got to understand how hard, it's arguably the hardest race in North America.
It's insane.
And Loren, who, had only run a marathon previous, decided she was going to go out and attempt to run Bigfoot with me the last time I ran it. And I think the reason that it's so profound and so provocative is because we're not just running a ridiculously hard race. I mean, people fly in from all over, elite runners from all over the world fly in for this race.
And we are not elite runners.
We're not. We're
not even close.
This girl don't even have a hip.
We are not elite runners.
No, she don't have a hip. I don't know what she's doing. But anyways, there was a variety of reasons. But what we're really trying to do, I think, in our own kind of way, is we're trying to replicate the struggle that children face, because it's insurmountable mountains that they're climbing, not just once, for 5 days in a race, but every gosh darn day. They're climbing these mountains, and they're climbing volcanoes, and they're struggling, and they're tired. And then, and then like for me, I didn't finish. When you don't finish a race, they give you a title, an acronym. It's called DNF. And I see you look on your face.
Oh, I know.
It means did not finish. And the first year I tried to run Bigfoot, I got timed out. I got to an aid station too late, and they timed me out. And so I was devastated. But, just like kids who go through cancer treatment and then they're in remission and then they relapse, they don't have any choice. They have to go back, and they have to go through treatment again, or they're going to die. And so I wasn't going to die if I didn't run Bigfoot again, but I wasn't going to I wanted to be able to model for these kids how we don't quit, and how we don't stop trying. So I went back and I tried to run it a second time. And the second time I ripped my groin muscle, and it was unfortunate because I ripped it like 14 miles before the next aid station.
Sounds so painful.
It was pretty painful. So I had to like hobble over these volcanic lava rocks to the next aid station. And I got another DNF. And then the third year, I got so severely dehydrated that I couldn't hold any water down anytime I tried to drink water. I mean, that's how difficult these races are. But that's how difficult all of these things I'm describing to you, going through chemotherapy and going through treatments, that shit pales in comparison to what it's like to go through chemotherapy and to go through treatment. So anyways, disqualified 3 years in a row. I have a tattoo on my leg. It says 2016 DNF, 2017 DNF, 2018 DNF. And then we went back in 2019, Loren and I did. And it was a difficult race. And I think Loren, who had only run a marathon prior to, she found out firsthand just how difficult that race was. So sadly, Loren got a DNF too. But she encouraged me to keep going and to keep moving forward. And eventually, on my fourth try, I did finish that race. And it was the proudest moment of my life. And while you did get a DNF at that race, I can tell you with absolute certainty, I would not have finished the race if it hadn't been for you. With the way we dealt with each other and the way we worked together, training and leading up to that race, and the fact that even after you DNF'd, you followed me around that race course and supported me. You could hardly walk, and you followed me around that race course and you encouraged me and supported me, and I was able to finish. So I have a tattoo on my leg. It says 2016 did not finish. 2017 did not finish. 2018 did not finish. Then it says 2019 fucking finished.
Hell yeah.
we finished that race, right? So Loren, not to be outdone, she's like, bro, I can't deal with that DNF.
Yeah.
So that's why she's coming back to run the Moab 240 with me to get a little retribution. So let me ask you, matter of factly, like, how did it feel? What was it like to get that DNF for you? Because you succeeded everything.
It was incredibly hard, and it was humbling. And I think it was a good reminder though, because just like you were saying, sometimes these kids, they finish the treatment and they're like, all right, I'm good to go. Let's start my life back and let's go. And then you find out, oh, it's back. Or in my own life, I actually, I had a brain tumor. It'll be almost 4 years ago.
Wait. So you went into remission from the Ewing sarcoma, and then later on in life, you developed a brain cancer?
So not brain cancer, brain tumor.
Brain tumor. What's the difference between a tumor and brain cancer?
So
I know, but go ahead.
So it was not malignant, but it was in a very bad location. And actually, my surgeon told me if I wouldn't have found it when I did and got it removed, I would have lost my vision. So
after everything that you went through as a kid, the hip, all of that stuff, you developed a secondary cancer tumor later in life.
Yep. Right. And here's the thing. The doctors told me I most likely got that from the treatments, the medicine that they gave me as a kid.
Well, that's the funny thing.
Sorry to detour a little bit, but
that's the thing. Like, we euphemistically call it medicine, but
it's poison.
It's poison. And chemotherapy is a carcinogen, which means that causes cancer. So anyways, I'm sorry. Go ahead and feed your story. So you DNF at Bigfoot.
And I honestly, I mean, I did not take it well, Tom. I did not take it well at all. It's one of the hardest things I've actually been through just for myself, because I'm not used to failing. I mean, I'm used to, I hit my head against the wall or people tell me not to do it, but I eventually get there, right? And here's the thing. I'm going back. I'm doing another race. So I failed Bigfoot that time, but it's not like I failed my ultimate goal, which was to raise money and to help you finish the race.
Well, I don't like the word failed, because I don't think you failed. What you did is you went and tried to run this ridiculously stupid hard ass race that you were completely unqualified to run. And you didn't finish it, not for lack of heart, because you would have not stopped. They made you stop because you timed out.
Yeah.
That's all it is. But you didn't fail. You just didn't.
But at the time,
it feels that way.
I saw it as a failure at the time.
Listen, I failed 3. I called it the same way.
But at the time, I was like,
I didn't tell you didn't fail, but I damn sure failed 3 times.
I took it very hard. And here's the thing, though. And I think I talked about it a little bit when the race was happening. I did like a video or something. I found out when I got back to the cabin, and this was why you were still out there. And I just gotten back to the cabin where we were staying, and I was feeling incredibly down on myself. And I was talking to one of my girls that I mentor, and she called me very upset, and she said they decided to go ahead and amputate my leg. And I got goosebumps just talking about it, because it reminded me, like, what are you doing? This isn't about you. This is about them. And they need you to keep showing up. They need you to keep doing that hard stuff. They need you to show up and put your big girl pants on. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. And you got to do the hard stuff, because look at what they're doing. They're doing the hard stuff. And so it was a reminder to me, it may not turn out the way that you want it to, but it's not really about you.
It's never been about me at the end of the day. It wasn't. But unfortunately, you do get so invested in wanting to finish that race and wanting to, accomplish a race. One of the biggest accomplishments when you do finish a race that big, it is very satisfying, especially after you've struggled. So I know for a fact, but I do hear what you're saying. Like,
it was hard.
Yeah. But also, we have to remember, we have to keep in perspective why we're doing it.
Exactly.
So one of the things I want to talk about real quick is during that race, at the Bigfoot race, the race, for the first time ever, they have this like hailstorm,
of course,
of biblical proportions. Like, I'm not kidding, man. There was hail.
They're like, this never happens.
Yeah, this is not supposed to happen, but it happened.
But I was there, so.
And I mean, the hail was as big as softballs. And
I had welts all over my head. It was insane.
And the wind was like going like 50 miles an hour, and the lightning was striking so much that it was in the middle of the night. It seemed like it was during the day, and I was sure I was going to get struck by lightning.
I was too.
We were separated at that part. But so you told me that you had gotten off track a little bit.
Oh, I got lost.
Course. So what was that like to be in the middle of a shit stinking hailstorm, lightning striking on the top of a mountain, no less, there's nothing on that top of the mountain except you and the lightning. That was it. There's no rocks and trees or nothing. There's you and the lightning.
So it was me and the lightning.
What was it like? I know what it was like for me, but what was it like, man?
It was crazy. I feel like looking back now, it's very parallel to my cancer journey, though, because you will find yourself alone and you don't know where you're going. You don't know what you're doing, just one foot in front of the other. And actually, the hail was coming down, the rain was coming down, the lightning, and I got like a poncho on or something that they gave me at the last aid station, and I'm trying to figure out. So you don't have like an actual map with you. You have this thing on your phone you can use to you had it too. And if you get lost, you can kind of re-navigate yourself on the trail or whatever. Well, when it's hailing and raining and it's dark outside, you can't really see anything. You don't know what's going on. So I was like, man, I am lost. Like, I don't know what's up. I don't know what's down. I don't know what's going on. And this is going to sound crazy, so bear with me. But I was like, what am I going to do? I kept just kind of walking straight to see if I would come back on the trail or whatever. And then I just stood there for a second, and it was really quiet. And I looked over to the left, and there was an elk standing there. And I got this feeling, and it was like, go that way. Right? So I went, an elk in the middle of a storm, with hail and lightning and all this stuff. Like, that doesn't happen,
right.
And maybe some people can argue and say I hallucinated it, whatever. But still, there's a freaking elk there in the middle of a storm. And, I followed the elk into that direction, and then the elk was gone, and I was back on the trail. Wow. Insane.
Yeah. Loren and I have a lot of really interesting stories about shit just like that. I mean, today was a good example of it. Today we had some technical difficulties. We were missing a microphone cable. I'll tell you this story real quick because it's cool.
That's a good story.
Yeah, we're missing a microphone. So this morning I went to the Starbucks, which is about 12 miles down the road from me, and I got a coffee, and I was driving over here to meet Loren, and this guy comes pulling up, and he almost like rammed into me, and he's like rolls down his window because it says Stillbrave down the side of my truck, and he's like, "Are you Tattoo Tom? You're Tattoo Tom?" He goes, "I work with Loren. Like, I love what you do. I love you guys. Like, I really appreciate the work you do with the kids, that kind of stuff." He's a firefighter too. So, anyways, Loren comes over and we talk about it that I ran into this guy or whatever, and he apparently just lives right down the road from me, and so we're missing a mic cable, and we only have one microphone cable. So I'm like, how are we going to do our podcast?
What are we going to do?
So we go out. Loren and I go out,
just winging it.
Yeah, what are we going to do? We're going to wing it like we always do, right? So we go out, and every single music store in the 50-mile radius of my house is closed on Sundays. So we're out there, we're driving around, and we don't know what we're going to do. And the day today worked out fine, where my producer Chris is available, Loren's available, I'm available. We got to do it today, and the podcast has to go out. What are we going to do? And anyways, Loren, because we had met this guy had almost rammed into me earlier. I didn't really almost ram into me, but he was on Loren's mind. So Loren's like, I think that guy is like a musician or something. Let me call him. So no shit, she calls him. And long story short, we meet him at this church where he's a guitar player in the praise band. He welcomes us into the church. There's a whole wall full of microphone cables. And he's like, grab you a cable, go back and do your podcast. And Loren and I just looked at each other like, what the hell?
What just happened?
Yeah, but we have a long, we're going to have 4 or 5 episodes just to tell you about all the really like whack stories that make no sense. And we almost don't want to talk about because nobody will believe us, right?
Exactly.
But anyways, thanks to this guy. What's his name? I forgot.
John.
Thanks to John, we're able to pull the podcast off today. So John, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you. Saved the day.
You saved the day.
Legit saved the day. All right. Well, Loren, let me just ask you this then, because what are your, going into the Moab 240, knowing that, you DNF'd in a 200-mile race. This race is, I don't know, 40 miles longer.
Give or take.
So what are your thoughts on that? But more importantly, what, Loren, is your, let me back up the whole question. Instead of talking about Moab and that, I want to know, Loren, this moment, what is your biggest fear?
I think my greatest fear is that, none of us know how much time we have here in this life, right? And my greatest fear is that I will not impact or change the world in a positive way before my time here is over. Like, I feel like, and I know some other people that are cancer survivors can relate to this. There's an incredible amount of survivor's guilt that comes with that. And I think that plays...
Wait, talk to me a little bit about what that is for those who out there who might know. What is survivor's guilt?
So a lot of times when you start treatment, you're going to kind of have this, it just happens, this second family, other kids and parents that are going through the same thing that you're going through. And something that I like to call my friends or my battle buddies. You have that in the military, fire department. We had that when we were going through recruit school. It's kind of somebody that you endure all this hard stuff with. But you can connect with that person and they're pretty much your best friend. They become family. And unfortunately, all my battle buddies lost their battle with cancer. And so I feel like I kind of have to prove, or I have to do something great because I was given this incredible chance to be here and they're not here. And so my biggest fear, it kind of plays into that. I want to make sure I do a good job. I want to make sure I make them proud because they're not here and I am. And I got to carry for them what they weren't able to do here.
Well, I can tell you with complete conviction, you're doing a pretty damn good job of that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not throwing empty compliments at you.
That's another compliment.
It's like, I'm not having you on the podcast anymore.
But it weighs heavy on me, Tom.
Yeah, but I've seen firsthand, you can't quantify what you do for these kids. Renai is a good example. I mean, I could throw, all the kids' names out there. A good example, when they are inconsolable, when they are lost and confused and they don't know what to do, you're there, and I mean, if you never do another thing good, moving forward in your life, you've already succeeded because you have done more than your fair share. And that's me being serious. That's not me giving you a comment blowing sunshine. That's being for real, for real. I've seen that. And that's why you work for me. And that's why if you try to go work for another foundation, I'll have to kill you dead.
What's blood in, blood out.
Blood out. I mean,
you told me that from the beginning.
Yeah, she came to work for Stillbrave, and I was like, "You can come to work for me, but it's blood in, blood out."
Yeah.
But hopefully, you'll stick around for a little while.
Oh yeah, I'm here. So I'm here for the long haul.
All right, so let me go back just a second. So DNF at Bigfoot, and I know Bigfoot's still probably in your crawl, and you want to go back someday.
I will go to Bigfoot one day.
Right,
I will go.
So now
you're going to pace me. That's what you said.
I don't ever want to go back to Bigfoot. I learned my lesson at a damn race. All right, so what are you thinking going into Moab 240? Is your training different? What are you going to do different? How are you going to finish this race? Because I know, you're not wanting to come out with a DNF again. So
yeah, my training is going to be different. I'm definitely going to incorporate and keep some of my weight training and strength conditioning. I kind of was just doing cardio, and something I picked up from the race and kind of watching you in my training is to do a little bit more hiking and power walking and engage those different muscles. And just kind of go into it with a little bit more structure, because I think because of what I've been through, I was kind of like, I got a strong will to get through this. And sure, that will get you so far, and that got me as far as I got. But there is a method to the madness. And I've been studying other ultra runners and other things that they do and trying to take what I can to put that in my plan for Moab. So yeah, there's definitely going to be some change up. So
okay, well, I'm excited because you're going to have to help me get across that finish line. So
we're going to do it.
I feel pretty good about it. But again, we really could use your support. So please, please, please go to the link in the comment section and read the stories and make a donation. And I'm going to say it like, get off your ass, sponsor a mile.
You were talking about the kids, and to never be forgotten and things like that. And I just want to go back for a second because it made me remember, unfortunately, one of my girls passed away about 6 months ago. And one of the things that she had us draw on her window in the hospital was, "Never forget me."
Listen, this is going to be a good time to probably ask you this. Why don't you tell me about Jenny? What was she like?
She was awesome. She was one of those people that, you meet and you love right away. So Jenny, she had leukemia, and she had, I hate this because they're like, "Oh, they have leukemia. That's the good kind of cancer." I hate that so much. There's no good kind of cancer, first of all. And second of all, it doesn't matter. There's so many different types of leukemia, and your body responds to different kinds of treatments. Anyway, long story short, she had leukemia. She was diagnosed when she was 17, 18, and she did the leukemia treatment protocol, which was very intense. She was on steroids. A lot of people that haven't gone through it, they might not know this, but a lot of times they put you on high steroids. It makes you bloat and it makes you gain a bunch of weight. People think, oh, you're going to have chemo, you're going to lose weight and be skinny and you're going to be cute and all this stuff. And it's not cute at all. And so she was very self-conscious about that. But it was wonderful that we met because I was able to kind of build her up and show her, this isn't just you. Like, you have other things you need to do. You're not done yet. And so within that, I motivated her to stay with school. And so she graduated with her high school diploma. And Jenny came from Honduras just a couple years ago, and she didn't know any English really at all. So she was learning a second language, and she was learning how to be in high school here. And I mean, there were so many obstacles that she was already dealing with. And then she got diagnosed with cancer. And so she had just graduated high school, and we were excited for her to move on with the rest of her life. And she had enrolled in nursing school. She decided she wanted, so Jenny didn't have family here. She had her boyfriend/husband Carlos, who was here with her, but her mom was estranged and her dad, unfortunately, was still in Honduras. So she didn't have any family here. Her family to her were the nurses. And so she wanted to do what they did for her. And she wanted to kind of give that back. So she was enrolled in nursing school and she was taking the prereqs. And then, oh, guess what, Jenny, the cancer's back. I remember when she called me and she told me that it was back, and I honestly couldn't believe it, Tom. And I think you can probably relate to this. We see all these things all the time. We see it over and over and over again, but it doesn't change how you feel when someone you truly love and care about, and we put our hearts in it every single time, every relationship that we have with these kids and these families. It doesn't change how you feel when you get the news, like this news that she gave me. And unfortunately, it was right in the middle of COVID, and so I couldn't even be with her at that minute. I couldn't. She was there by herself, and when she got that news. And fortunately, the social workers and the doctors were able to accommodate us so that I could go and see her. And she was allowed to have, besides Carlos, only one other visitor because of the COVID rules. And she picked me, and that it really honored me. And I felt really honored to be there with her. Unfortunately, things did not go well. She relapsed in August and she passed away in September. I mean, things escalated extremely fast. When she first relapsed, we talked about she really wanted to marry Carlos, and we were planning a wedding. Right away, we were going to try to fit it in. You and I had even talked about Stillbrave was going to help fund it and all those things. And we were getting ready to plan her wedding, and she got really sick really fast. Within a couple weeks, she was in the ICU. And then, and other parents, and probably you especially, can relate to this. They took us into the bad news room and they said, there's nothing left we can do. And that is the most powerless feeling I've ever felt in my life. It's one thing to be the patient, but to be kind of in that caregiver role or that family role, it's very different and powerless. And they just looked at me and said, there's nothing else we can do. And that's it. That's all they say. That's it. And then you just have to say, okay. I mean, you can say other things or whatever, but it's like this internal struggle where you're like, well, what now? Like, what do we do now? And there's nothing else that you can do. They don't give you any other options. That's it. And that's one of the reasons why I think you and I are so passionate, because there's nothing left, and we want to change that. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but
I think one of the things that I pride myself on is when they do tell the families or the patient that there's nothing else that they can do. That's when Stillbrave. I think that's the true heartbeat of Stillbrave, because when there's nothing else that can be done, and there's nobody else there, then that's when we're there, and that's when we do whatever we can in those moments. And I consider the work that we do in those moments to be sacred. And people always ask me, and I think you probably would speak to this as well. People are like, how do you do it? Like, how do you go in there, patient after patient, and when you lose somebody that you were as close to as you were to Jenny, like, how do you tie your shoes again? And because I called you the next day and I was like, I'm devastated by this too, but I got another kid. I need you to call this other girl's family, like, right now. And can you do that? And you're like, yeah, I can do it. But I would ask you how you do it, but I bet your answer would be a lot like mine. When people ask me, how do you do it? The best fucking answer I got is how do you not?
how do you know?
How do you
That's
not?
exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, because what we do, it's not, again, like we asked for it or we wanted it, and we don't take any false pride in it. But we've been really blessed, I guess, for lack of, but I don't really like that word. Let me pick a better word. We've been really fortunate
Yeah.
to be able to be that person, both of us, who are there in the most sacred moments of a person's life. When kids
And it was fortunate I was there with Jenny and Carlos.
Yeah.
I mean, Carlos relied on me a huge deal.
And just like a lot of the families, I mean, after the child would pass away, like we stay plugged in. We don't, like, if you're still Brave family, you're always still Brave family. I still go to dinner with, families who lost children 10 years ago, and then they still invite me over for dinner. I still get Christmas cards, and then, their children, their other children still message me and stuff like that. But it's great because Carlos, would have been completely lost if it weren't for you. And I can tell how many times you called me after Jenny passed away. And the first thing that you asked me was, can we help with the services? Because there was nobody to help.
Yeah.
And Stillbrave did. We stepped up, and we didn't just give her inexpensive cremation type service. We gave her a beautiful service, and we released butterflies, and we celebrated her life, and we made her life matter. And we did that so much for Jenny, but we did it for Carlos, her boyfriend, and I did it for you, because I wanted to make sure that you knew that her life mattered. And I've seen, the difference that you've made, and how that only propelled you to try harder. And that's an admirable thing. And you can't teach that. You can't learn that. And there's people that go to medical school to become doctors, and they can't do that. And there's people that go to medical school to become a variety of other things in the childhood cancer world. But there's no school for what you and I do.
No,
and
there's really not.
If there were, I certainly wouldn't have enrolled.
Yeah, I don't think.
I definitely wouldn't have took those classes. That's for sure. But
just on that note, like looking back, and not to toot my own horn or anything like that, but just looking at the progression of where I met Jenny, when I first met her. I mean, it was just incredible to see her flourish and bloom into this beautiful, wonderful young lady. Yeah. She got hope, and that's my biggest goal. I have all these other goals with the mentorship program. Of course, there's all these things I want to do, but my biggest goal, and I think the biggest thing I try to do, is give them hope, because it can radically change everything.
Well, one thing that, isn't talked about a lot, and, I have no boundaries, so I don't mind talking about it. A lot of times in the childhood cancer community, if you're a charming, cute little white girl, you're going to get a lot of support.
And let me tell you, I wouldn't believe this until I saw it with my own eyes, Tom.
But when you're, a marginalized demographic, if you're Hispanic, if you're African American, there's not as much team community support, and that's a travesty, and it is, and like I said at the beginning of this podcast, Stillbrave doesn't check to see if the kid is a citizen of the United States before we help. And I hate to say this out loud, but I've worked with some foundations who that's a prerequisite. They don't help certain children if they're not U.S. citizens. It's on their application. And I mean, I could do a whole episode. We
could go on. Yeah.
I can already feel it's getting warm in here talking about that. But that's more common than you might think. And that's I try not to touch on too many politics. I don't want to touch on too many politics in this podcast, so I don't want to turn anybody off. But that's not politics. What I'm talking about. That's some bullshit.
It is.
So Stillbrave doesn't do that. Loren doesn't do that. I don't do that, and nor would we ever. And I think for Jenny, using Jenny as an example, she was kind of lost and alone and forgotten for a variety of reasons. She was an older kid. She was in a marginalized demographic, and you stepped up and you showed her a life that she had dreamed that America would be like for her. So in that remaining time before she died, she lived the American dream, and she lived it because you were there and you showed up for her and you fucking winged it. And that's what we do.
I did wing it.
That's what we do, man. Well, listen, I want to thank you, Loren, so much for coming out and being a part of the podcast. I couldn't think of a person that I would have, I didn't think. When it came time, Chris asked me, who do you want to be your first guest? I was like, Loren. Duh. The Loren. That's what I guess. I want the Loren to be the first guest. So obviously there's a lot of stories left to tell. We want to talk to you more about Ariana. We want to talk to you about so many kids we want to talk about. So we're definitely going to have Loren back on. I hope you guys have enjoyed the time that we spent together. And so we don't leave you guys too shook up. We decided here at Just Winging It podcast that, I know a lot of you are looking at me and you're like, who is this tattooed knucklehead? Just exactly who does he think he is? What has he got a podcast, and how is he the director of a childhood cancer foundation? I mean, look at him. I look like I should be, singing. I look like Iggy Pop. I'm old and tattooed and I can't sing, to be quite frank. But anyway, so we're going to start a new segment that we're going to do at the end of every podcast, and it's going to be called who is this dude anyways? And I want to thank my friend Rachel for coming up with the name. Big shout out to Rachel, who's a leukemia survivor herself. And she came up with the name for the segment. So basically what this segment is going to be about is I'm going to give you a little insight into the inner cogs and wheels of my brain, what made me the person that I am today, what influenced me growing up, who my heroes were, what books did I read, what music did I listen to, what plays did I attend, a variety of different things, just to give you an idea of who is this dude anyways. So today I want to introduce you to one of the books that I read that really had a pivotal impact in my life. And I would encourage you, if you haven't heard about it, to check it out. It's a book by, of all people, Mark Twain, and it's called Letters from the Earth. I think it's important to note this is not Huckleberry Finn. So be forewarned when you go into it. In fact, this was written really during a really dark period in Twain's life, where he had just lost his wife and his daughter had died as well. And he was in debt and he was lost and he was alone and he was scared. And that was an uncomfortable place for a guy like Mark Twain, who had been, a successful author and satirist and comic and all of the things that he was, a real pivotal person in his time and day and age. But this book, when it was originally written by Mr. Twain, was considered so blasphemous that nobody would touch it. He couldn't get a publisher to even look at it. And his daughter, Clara, was so embarrassed and didn't want her father to be defined by this, like the way he approaches, God and the meaning of life. And I get it, because, his daughter had just died. His wife had just died. He was not a happy person. But finally, in 1962, this book was published. And it's a series of short stories. The story that impacted me most is the story Letters from the Earth. So this is my personal copy of the book. It's a first printing from 1962. I was living down in Jacksonville Beach, Florida at the time with my friend Angie. And Angie and I would sit around and we would read books to each other. And I don't know how this book came to be one of the books that we read to each other, but we would just sit there on the beach drinking Earl Grey coffee. And I used to smoke cigarettes back then. We were smoking cigarettes and we read this book. And I didn't know at the time, although it was very profound and interesting, I didn't know at the time how it was going to resonate with me, how much it was going to resonate with me, until years later, my daughter got sick and my daughter died. And I felt exactly the way that Mark Twain felt when he was writing this book. And he was wondering, where is God? What is God? How did this happen? So I would encourage you, if you guys want an interesting read, this, you may like it, you may not, but if you want to know who this guy is anyway, this is a guy, I read this book and had a huge and profound impact on me. So I hope you guys like this section. I'm looking forward to bringing it to you, week after week. It'll be books, it'll be movies, it'll be, rock bands that I like, things like that, just to give you some insight into how I became the twisted, demented individual that stands before you today. So anyways, with all that being said, I want to thank Loren Jewell again for coming out. She's my soul sister. She's one of my favorite people in the entire world. We'll see you next week on the Just Winging It podcast. Tattoo Tom. Still brave, Shayla. Still brave.